continues to drive cases up around the country. Government officials at every level now are urging people to get vaccinated, but they're facing a bitter battle because of online misinformation. Earlier this year, the Center for Countering Digital Hate identified 12 people who make up 65% of the misinformation seen on social media. Joining us now is Imran Ahmed, the founder and CEO of the organization. Imran, it's good to see you.
You too.
All right, so who makes up this disinformation dozen that you talk about, and why haven't any of the big social media companies taken action against them?
Well, look, these are 12 super spreaders of digital misinformation. They're people who, with companies behind them, charities, large organizations, often hundreds of staff and millions of dollars to spend, that they have become the producers of the best quality, most shareable misinformation. And we calculated that these 12 individuals make up 2/3 of all misinformation shares on social media. The reason why companies haven't taken action? Well, because frankly, they're a draw. They are eyeballs to their sites. And in the end, because of the way that liability works on social media platforms, no one can actually get them to take action against these people. They don't have to close their accounts down, even when the President of the United States says that their inaction is costing lives.
Can you give us just a few examples of who we are talking about when you talk about this dozen?
Sure. Well, one example is Joe McCullough, who claims that the way to solve acute COVID is nebulized hydrogen peroxide. It sounds very scientific, but nebulized means breathed in through a mask, for example, and hydrogen peroxide is bleach. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is another example who says that African blood is different to white blood and that black boys shouldn't be vaccinated because they have more side effects. That's simply not true. And what it means is that, of course, African American people would be more reluctant if they believed him to take a vaccine for a disease that has ravaged that community and had a disproportionate impact on them.
So a lot of times it's hard to recognize what's true and what's misinformation on social media. I mean, just listening to what you said, I think that sounded pretty outrageous to me, just the way you described it, and that they would even say things like that. Are there any simple tips that you can give our viewers to better identify fact from fiction, especially when it comes to vaccine misinformation?
But the truth is that the social media companies in particular would like the onus to be upon the individual to try and identify misinformation when they see it. In fact, it's quite difficult. These are really sophisticated preachers of misinformation. For example, often they pose things just as questions. Often they say they've got different theories. They're peppering people constantly, trying to make them hesitant. What they're doing is trying to overwhelm our defenses, our ability to critically fact-check all that information. The best thing that we can do is remember that the best source of medical information, the one that we've trusted for years, for decades in our families, for example, is our personal physician. But also to remember that anything that you see on social media that isn't coming from an official account, for example, the CDC, or from your local practice, might actually be misinformation. It's very difficult on these platforms to distinguish between good and bad information, especially when the rules that govern those platforms, that is that they actually say medical misinformation isn't allowed, but they don't enforce those rules.
And why is that? Why is that, and why is it so hard to fact check?
Well, I mean, in reality, these 12, we have fact checked for them. You would think the platforms would thank us, perhaps send us a bottle of wine and say, congratulations for having identified for them who are the super spreaders of misinformation. In reality, because these audiences are worth a lot of money to them, conspiracy theories are addictive. They keep people on platform digging further and further, going down the rabbit hole of misinformation and conspiracism, which if any of us has someone who's swallowed a conspiracy theory, will recognize that behavior. So because it keeps people on platform consuming ads, actually these big tech companies that have the wealth to know better have failed to act on the misinformation.
So you're saying greed is costing lives?
Absolutely. This comes down to one thing. It comes down to dollars. And unfortunately, there is no way for anyone to impose a line of moderation when there's nothing they can really do about it.
Well, Imran, then what can be done to pressure these companies to do more in response to misinformation that can be incredibly harmful?
Well, I mean, at this point, we saw both the anger in the White House when President Biden cited the numbers from the disinformation dozen to say at least 12 people are causing untold havoc, and he said Facebook are killing people. But that also showed the limitations of what he can do. We have no tools beyond moral pressure. Now, Senator Klobuchar has a bill which she's just introduced a few days ago, which would create liability for social media companies if they permit the spread of misinformation when they know that it's being spread in a public health crisis. And we're going to have to be creative because really this is a problem that lots of countries around the world are wrestling with. In the UK, they're trying an online safety bill. In Europe, they're trying a Digital Services Act. In the US, until now, it's been piecemeal. It will be up to President Biden to show the same boldness that he's shown in confronting other social issues, for example, the economic downturn, when it comes to the issue of misinformation on social media.
Imran Ahmed is the CEO and founder of the Center for Countering Digital Hate. Imran, thank you so much for your time.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
This seaside photo is about to play host